Okay, so you're familiar with the concept of context, and maybe you've started exploring Snowflake a little bit more. If so, then you probably saw these and wondered what they are, which is why I'm going to be covering roles in Snowflake today. Hey everyone, Gilberto from Snowflake here. Today I'll be explaining what roles are, how role-based access control in Snowflake works, and how you can create roles, grant them privileges, and assign them to users. So let's dive in. So, what exactly is a role in Snowflake? If you take a look at the docs, you'll see it referred to as an entity in Snowflake, specifically an entity that you can grant privileges to. These privileges govern what that role is able to do in the account, and the neat thing is that they can be configured quite extensively. So, you can think of a role as a defined set of permissions, and once a role is defined, you can then assign it to a user in the account. Which brings me to my next point. A role is not the same thing as a user. In fact, this is a frequent point of confusion for folks getting started with Snowflake. A user represents an actual person or end user within Snowflake. For example, the username that you use to log into Snowflake with, that represents you, a Snowflake user. A role, on the other hand, is simply a set of defined permissions that governs what that role is able to do in a Snowflake account. So the typical workflow involves creating a role, configuring its permissions, and then granting that role to one or more users in that account. That way, when a user logs into Snowflake, they can assume that role and go about their day with the right privileges. Now, you're probably wondering, why? This workflow speaks to the principle of least privilege, which basically means that a user should only have the exact permissions that they need to do their job, no more and no less. So, if a junior analyst only needs to be able to read data in the account, then they shouldn't have the privileges to also drop tables, for example. This entire approach of defining permissions via roles is known as role based access control, abbreviated RBAC and pronounced as RBAC. In short, RBAC limits system access based on user roles in an organization. Well implemented RBAC will help reduce security risks, limit the impact of mistakes made in the account, help with regulatory compliance, and more. It's generally a good practice for security design. Let me show you what this can look like in Snowflake. You can try everything that I'm about to do using a free Snowflake trial account. You can use a link in the description to quickly and easily create one. Okay, so for this demo, I'll be using the role of account admin, which is actually a system defined role in Snowflake, and I'll cover system roles in just a bit. For now, let's imagine I need to create a role for finance analysts so that I can show you how RBAC works in practice. So I'll start by creating the finance analyst role. I'll type create role finance analyst role. I'll go ahead and run that. Now I'm going to grant some permissions to this role. So let's give it access to read from a finance database, which you can see here on the left, finance DB. I'll type grant usage on database finance DB to role finance analyst role. I'll go ahead and run that. I also need to give this role explicit access to the schemas and tables inside of the database. So now I'm going to type grant usage on schema finance db.public to role finance analyst role. I'll run that. And finally, grant select on all tables in schema finance db.public to role finance analyst role. I'll run that as well. And finally, I'm going to assign this role to a user. So I'll say grant role finance analyst role to user Snowflake. Now the user Snowflake can switch to this role and access the finance data simply by assuming this new role that we just created. So for the purposes of this video, let's imagine that I've logged into this account as the Snowflake user, which means I can assume this role since it's been granted to this user. So I'll type use role finance analyst role. And now I can query the table that's in this schema. I'll type select star from revenue limit 10. Now this table is empty, so this query is not going to produce any results, but as you can see, this is great. This is RBAC in action. Now this works, but there's a slight problem with my approach. I used account admin for everything, which violates the principle of least privilege. Account admin has unlimited privileges and should be used sparingly. Thankfully, Snowflake provides multiple system-defined roles that follow access control best practices. Let me show you when to use each one. Account admin is the top level role with full account privileges. It's used for account level administration. Security admin manages users, roles, and grants. User admin creates users and roles. Sysadmin creates warehouses and databases and other objects. And public is automatically granted to every user and role. It's used for permissions that everyone should have. There are actually a couple of other roles as well: global org admin and org admin. Org admin is going to be phased out in a future Snowflake release, leaving only global org admin. Now, this role performs organization level tasks like managing the lifecycle of Snowflake accounts and viewing organization level usage information. Now, this role only exists in organization accounts, which I won't be covering in this video, but I did want to let you know about this other system defined role in case you ever come across it. The key insight is that each role has specific responsibilities. By using the appropriate role for each task, we follow the principle of least privilege even for administrative operations. Let's redo the previous example using the system-defined roles in Snowflake. I'm going to use user admin to create the role since that's what this role is designed for. So I'll start by dropping the role and starting over. I'll type use role account admin, drop role finance analyst role. Okay, so let me assume the user admin role so that I can create the role once again. Use role, user admin, create role, finance analyst. Next, I'm going to use security admin to grant privileges since managing grants is its responsibility. Use role, security admin. I'll run the same grants that we granted earlier to this role: grant usage on database, grant usage on schema, and grant select on all tables in that schema. I'm also going to allow this role to operate and use this warehouse compute warehouse. And then finally, I'll assign this role to a user, which security admin can also do. Grant role, finance analyst role to user Snowflake. All right, so now let's test that our role works exactly the same as before. I'll type use role, finance analyst role, select star from financedb.public.revenue limit 10. Okay, great. The result is identical, but now we followed proper security practice by using the appropriate system role for each operation. This approach demonstrates proper role usage, limits the extent of damage if a mistake is made, and creates an audit trail that shows who did what with which permissions. RBAC also helps us scale access and permissions if needed. So if, for example, I need to add my colleague Vino to the finance team, I can just grant her user that same role. And if for some reason the finance team needs more permissions, I can modify the role once and it'll affect all users that have that role. For more complex scenarios, you can create role hierarchies where roles inherit from other roles. For example, a data engineer role might inherit all the permissions of the finance analyst role, plus additional write permissions. Okay, if you're interested in learning more about roles, RBAC, and access control in Snowflake, this is my favorite page in the Snowflake docs. It's called Access Control Best Practices, and I like it because it talks about how to wield the account admin role responsibly and has a great example that shows how to implement RBAC. The link to the page is in the description, so be sure to check it out. And now for my favorite builder resource. It's this amazing blog post from Snowflake data superhero Maya Fairley, which covers RBAC with database roles in Snowflake. Now, we didn't specifically cover database roles in this video, but this blog post does an excellent job of clearly explaining what they are and showing you how to use them. And this is going to level up your understanding of RBAC. Be sure to check it out. The link is also in the description. Thanks for the amazing post, Maja. And by the way, you can find more amazing posts like this one on Snowflake's Builder blog, which is on Medium. Okay, so let's summarize things. RBAC in Snowflake combines roles as permission containers, the principle of least privilege, and the proper use of system-defined roles to create an access control framework that is both secure and scalable. Try implementing these patterns in your own Snowflake environment and let me know in the comments how it works for your use case. Also, let me know what questions you have and what topics you'd like to see videos on. I'll see you next time.